This episode was recorded in Q2 2026. The information provided in this podcast is for educational and informational purposes only. The views and opinions expressed by hosts and their guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the Irish College of GPs. By listening to this podcast, you acknowledge that no party is liable for any direct or indirect consequences resulting from the use of the information provided. More information can be found in the show notes or at irishcollegeofgps.ie.
Hello and a very warm welcome to the GP podcast from the Irish College of GPs with me, Dr. John Maher. Today I'm joined once again by Dr. Suzanne Kelly, Deputy Medical Director of the College, to preview this month's Wednesday webinar, which takes place on Wednesday the 3rd of June at 8 o'clock on Zoom. And in today's episode, along with this month's webinar topics, Suzanne discusses the new PCS cycle, the value of the PCS practice development plan at this time of year to GPs, and the role of college in providing courses to GPs that address the learning needs of clinicians in practice at every stage of their career. I'll add a link to the College Wednesday webinar recordings page to the show notes to access the back catalogue, and I'll also add links to the college courses and other resources mentioned by Suzanne in today's episode as usual. And following on from our successful launch of the podcast in March, Suzanne and I are going to take a summer break from the podcast with a plan to return in September. We'll re-release some of the earlier episodes that you may have missed first time around to the show feed once a fortnight to reflect the academic downtime that we know many of our GP colleagues look forward to at this time of year. And remember that listening to podcasts does qualify for work-based activity in your PCS e-portfolio, and 1 hour of podcast listening will grant you 1 credit of work-based learning. So don't forget to record the podcasts there, and hopefully you'll find that of additional value to you. And before I get on to today's episode and take the break for summer, I just wanted to say a very sincere thank you for listening to our first series, for rating the show on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and for getting in touch with us at podcast@icgp.ie. At the time of recording this episode, we've over 85 star reviews. We're heading towards 15,000 episode downloads. And, given that we launched just 3 short months ago, we're really thrilled, and we hope you will stay tuned for Series 2 in September. Okay, that's it for Series 1. Thanks again. And now on to my conversation with Suzanne. Enjoy. Okay, Suzanne, lovely to speak to you this evening, and thanks a million for taking the time.
Great to chat, John.
I know Dermot Quinlan is going to introduce this Wednesday's Wednesday webinar. That's going to be on the 3rd of June, and we're speaking on Monday evening, Bank Holiday Monday, the 1st of June.
So enthusiastic. Yeah.
Well, it's been a gloriously sunny bank holiday, in fairness, so can't complain. But we thought we would just get together and go through a few things this evening ahead of Dermot's introduction and the Wednesday webinar itself, of course, but also take the opportunity, maybe given the time of year that when we're speaking now, we've just completed 1 PCS cycle and we're into the next cycle. And I guess you might say at this time of the year, although people might have, they're beginning to be putting their holiday hat on, Suzanne, it's also a good time for planning.
It is, and the PCS is it's a full year long, and we know people take holidays and switch off, but it's a great time of the year to re-enroll. So re-enroll your PCS and then do your professional development plan, your PDP. And your PDP is where you sit down, you think about what you would like to learn over the following 12 months and what supports you might need. It is worth 5 points on your of CPD, so it's great. It's a very valuable piece of work to do. It's something that you do with a peer. So you sit down possibly with somebody in practice or maybe a colleague in the same area as you over a coffee and talk forward and back about some of the education you would like to do. Perhaps a modular course, something on demand, something over a weekend, and see where your learning needs are. And we know that doctors who plan their future education for the year tend to do more focused and directed learning, which is more useful in the longer term. So it's to support that educational need. So you sit with your peer, plan it out, reflect, and simply press PDP complete. And all of the steps are really easy to follow on the website. So once you log into your ePortfolio, there is a section on recording your PDP, and there's lots of help there with sample PDPs available to view as well, which is great.
Super. And of course, by becoming a college member, you get access to lots of different on-demand courses, as well as lower cost access to the more formal year-long or modular courses.
Yeah, so we've a blend of lots of different, there's lots and lots of different ways to get your learning, John. You can get Forum and you can do your distance learning piece, and that's worth credits. And you can read those and answer the questions in your own time. You can do an on-demand course, many of which are free. There's a really good one on sepsis, for example. Great learning there. Or you can decide, well, like for instance, with dermatology, and we have a piece in our webinar about dermatology, and it's perennially popular. And it's a multiple modular course with a live webinar. And there is a cost involved because, we have a platform where you can ask questions, and we have really good course providers who are either highly specialized GPs or specialists who are focusing the education very much for the busy GP and framing the education around the fact that GPs had limited time with patients and may have multiple things to address. So it's very, very specific education for GPs, and it's highly valued. So we get great feedback from those courses. So there's lots of different ways to learn, lots of different times to learn, because I think, as you and I know, John, with busy family life, busy running businesses, squeezing in your education has to come at a time that suits. And obviously, since we are talking about our podcasts, I would definitely like to highlight that on your ePortfolio page, if you scroll down, you will see that you can vote on your favorite podcast topics. And I think we've over 300 people have voted so far, and that'll help you listeners, myself and John, to decide what topics we need to cover and what you might like to hear, particularly in the autumn. So please give us your vote. You can also email our podcast at icgp.ie with your ideas. And we are reading all of those emails and taking all of the feedback on board. Isn't that right?
Absolutely. So as you said, and I'll put a link to this, and I'll put a link to some of those other courses that you mentioned as well, including dermatology and the sepsis online piece. But yeah, I'm looking here at my PCSE portfolio front page, Suzanne, and on the bottom left there, I can see that lovely poll. At the moment, it's acne, HRT, obesity, sepsis, and summer sickness. You just click which one you'd like us to make a podcast on. And as ever, we're really trying to be as responsive to our listenership as we possibly can, and this is still quite a new project for us.
It is, yeah.
And we're delighted with how successful it's been so far. And in fairness to listeners, like, we have over 85-star reviews now between Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and we've had some really positive feedback with reviews and emails, and we're really appreciative of that as well, because otherwise you feel like you're talking into a bit of a vacuum. So this is another way for us to try and make this component of what the college offers something that's of value to people.
And we'll be changing that poll. So if you have already voted in the poll, don't worry. You'll see that another day when you log in to record your credits for your ePortfolio, there'll be different options there to vote on. So we do, as you said, John, we want to be as responsive as possible. And certainly I know I was at a hurling match for one of my children, and a GP came up to me and said the podcasts are brilliant, and she had to pull in her car to take notes. And I said, no, the show notes are there. You don't have to do that. But it was really nice to hear that somebody was so struck by it that they felt they had to stop there and take it down. So, and I know so many people have said it to me that just been learning in a different way has been great. And lots of people have asked me about PCS credits and podcasts, and there's a very high bar to attach accredited credits to podcasts. So for now, while we work on it in the background, please record it as work-based learning. So if you listen to 2 podcasts, it certainly counts as an hour of work-based learning, which is towards your 50 points in total. So they are of value in your PCS recording as well.
On that note, Suzanne, in terms of listening to podcasts, when we launched back in early March this year, we did so with 5 or 6 episodes in very quick succession, just to get ourselves out there, as it were. And we were talking about what we were going to do for the summer, and we decided what we'd kind of reflect the kinds of rhythms that GPs tend to have in terms of their learning year, where the summer tends to be a little bit less intense, let's say.
It is definitely. I mean, we know the academic year doesn't run through July and August for the vast majority of people. And I think we all need a natural break, a step away from both work and education over the summer and spend quality time, family and friends, and disconnect. So I think to reflect that, it's important in the way we don't do webinars over the summer. Even Forum doesn't publish both months of the summer. So I think across all of our education platforms, we all take a little bit of a lull. And instead, what we will do is just reframe some of the earlier podcasts, because you're right, back at the end of February, early March, we launched 5, I think it was, in one date. And mainly it was to give people a choice of what they would like to listen to, which is great. But it's likely that some of our listeners haven't gone through the back catalogue. So I think you and I will be taking our own break, and I think that will be nice. And the quality of those podcasts is superb, and certainly the information has not changed. So they're still highly relevant to everyday general practice. So yes, if you're taking your holiday, a well-earned break in Europe, don't worry, you won't miss anything. And we'll be back with fresh content again towards the end of the summer.
Exactly. And what we'll do in the meantime is once a fortnight, we'll just re-upload one of those early episodes back into the feed so that, naturally, if you are interested in listening to something, we'll select something that you may have missed first time round.
Exactly. And as you said, it just reflects the natural rhythms of learning for people, and people being able to step away from this for a little period before they come back to an autumn. And I know everyone comes back reinvigorated in September, really keen for their education and academia. So yeah, absolutely. I think that's the best way to go.
Great. And then with that in mind, and September and into October, and planning, let's say, the autumn learning for yourself, there's an autumn conference coming up.
Yes. So we were surprised with how popular our online conferences were. And I think really in reflection, GPs are dotted all over the island, and many of our GPs are in that busy stage of life where they have significant family and caring commitments. So our online conference is at piece around accessibility, that everybody can tune in, everybody can log on the day from wherever they are, and there's no need to travel. So we're doing a conference again online on October. I'm going to say Saturday, October the 10th is the date that I have. And we'll have a really interesting array, particularly around technology and medicine. I think that'll be more of a theme for this conference, given that it's online. And we had a great response to our AI in medicine conference last October. So it's exciting.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to that one. And things, of course, are changing at such a pace. It'd be great to be able to, it'd be great to be able to just, kind of plug back in, as it were,
yes,
to new developments. Because I'm sure even since last year's conference, things have changed immeasurably, and what's coming down the pipe will be really interesting to see as well.
Speeding up for sure, John.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, so lots of reasons then to stay linked in with college, and of course, a great way to access all this content is by becoming a member, Suzanne.
Yes. So the majority of GPs in Ireland are members of the college and access a lot of education to our platform. But if you're thinking about becoming a member, you can contact the college through, even if it's around education, through education@icgp.ie. If you want to just join a specific webinar or course, that's absolutely fine. Let us know. But it might be interesting to you to see about becoming a full member, and we'd be delighted to hear that, because we're just very keen to support all our GPs around the country and support across lots of different parameters, not just education. So we'd like to think we are responsive. People contact us with a variety of questions about being a GP, and supporting them way beyond just the medical topics. And so, yes, so if you want to become a member, or you just want to join something on our education, just reach out and let us know.
And in terms of reaching out to college and getting access to particular pieces of education if you're considering becoming a full member, but you just want access to something in particular for now. Well, one very good example of that, of course, Suzanne, is the upcoming Wednesday webinar, which takes place on the 3rd of June. As I said, we're recording this on Monday the 1st. And that's going to be introduced this time around by Dermot Quinlan.
Yes, Dermot Quinlan, our medical director, is chairing the webinar on Wednesday. And as always, it's the first Wednesday of the month at 8 p.m. And we have a great lineup of speakers for the month of June's webinar. So our speakers include Professor Fiona Lyons, who is a professor of genitourinary medicine in St. James's Hospital. And she is going to speak about PrEP and PEP. I have to say I did not know what PEP was. So I had to look that one up.
And this is a particular form of PEP because I think, my understanding of PEP would have been around HIV PEP. And Fiona is going to speak about HIV PrEP, but DoxyPEP.
DoxyPEP, yes. I think I would say you're right. I worked in the Maher and definitely I knew what post-exposure prophylaxis was from needle stick injuries, but this is different. DoxyPEP is about reducing the transmission of sexually transmitted infections. So it's offered to patients who may need this in order to reduce the likelihood of them developing a serious bacterial STI. And I think that's fantastic to have that as part of a menu of options for our patients in general practice.
Yeah, a really interesting one. And I'm very much looking forward to this, I must say, Suzanne, because obviously, things like chlamydia and gonorrhea are continually circulating, especially among younger cohorts. It's a real problem. And I know that at the moment, I had a quick check on antibioticprescribing.ie and I didn't see an entry there for DoxyPEP. So potentially having something to offer patients who are concerned that they may have engaged in riskier activity which may result in an STI, and having something to offer them that's evidence-based can be really helpful, can't it?
Absolutely. I think that PrEP and DoxyPEP are particularly specialist topics. I think GPs may find they don't know much about it before they hear Fiona speaking at the webinar, and I think it would probably be offered through specialist clinics primarily. But I know from Fiona, they are looking for more GP providers. And it's like anything in medicine, we do a better job if we can bring the specialty closer to the patient. And I think it's really important as GPs, we know that this is an option, because I think it's terrible if we didn't even know that there is an option there to offer this care to patients. So knowing that it's there, that it's useful, that there's an evidence base for it, and that it reduces harm for patients. And Fiona will outline who are the patients who are most likely to benefit and how do you access. And even interesting stuff like, is there a cost? Does it cost money? How accessible have the HSE made this for our patients? So I think that's going to be a really interesting talk and really lots of new learning for our colleagues in general practice.
Absolutely. And as you said, Fiona is hoping to get more GPs upskilled in terms of delivering this kind of care. And what I might do is put a link to the contact details for more information in the show notes, if that'd be okay.
I think that's brilliant. I think she would be really delighted to hear that more GPs are interested in offering this accessible care to their patients in their community.
Great. Okay, so that's Professor Fiona Lyons with her talk on HIV PrEP and DoxyPEP. Perhaps we could pivot from there towards one of the areas that college specialises in terms of delivering education, and that's around dermatology, and in particular, Dr. Siobhan Tuig's discussion on Wednesday.
Yes, Dr. Siobhan Tuig is a course director for a dermatology course. As I said, very popular course. And with that phenomenal spell of weather we had last week, there's an awful lot of questions about protecting the skin and SPF, and a huge amount of misinformation online about SPF. It's actually fascinating to see that you think you're doing well, John, compared to our childhoods if you're applying sun cream. But then people start to go, oh, what about 50 versus 30? What's mineral sunscreen? Why is one more expensive than the other? And what should I put on my child? And even down to what are the environmental concerns about the packaging? But so Siobhan is going to do a whistle-stop tour Perhaps not through the packaging, but certainly through what we need to be putting on our skin and when and how often. And as Irish as myself, I have, I think, pretty much Fitzgerald type 1 skin. It's definitely something I need to be listening to and practicing throughout the summer.
And that's one of those areas, where there is an element of misinformation and disinformation, where I have to say, speaking for myself, that it's very easy for that element of granularity that some members of the public have for topic X passes me by. And then I get caught offside in clinic when I get asked a question, and it's the first time I've heard it. So I love talks like this, where I feel like I'm forewarned and forearmed for potential questions. Absolutely, yeah. And stuff that really is everyday topics that matter.
Exactly. And I think actually with the isotretinoin course, which had a huge number of people logging on and learning, one of the big things about isotretinoin is you have to wear SPF every single day. And there's been a lot of discussion on the boards about what is the best type, because their skin is quite fragile and delicate. So is there a difference in the sun creams and why, and what you should be recommending? And I can see those discussions going around in various WhatsApp groups. So I think Siobhan's talk will be very timely. And as you said, so we're just as prepared as our patients who are on Instagram or TikTok and they're learning from other people. So to correct any misinformation and to be very confident about, the advice that we're giving to our patients.
And it brings me very nicely on to our next talk, which is a medicine for the elderly talk with Professor Tony Foley, Suzanne, because you're reminding me of my time in dermatology outpatients as part of my GP training, when the dermatologists used to look at things like, AKs and BCCs and SCCs of elderly farmers, and recommend that the best therapy they could have is to get in a time machine back to the 70s and put on a hat and some sunscreen.
It's incredible.
So with that kind of, really elbowed in segue, move on to Tony's discussion on the medicine for the elderly side.
Yes, Professor Tony Foley is a GP in Kinsale, and he's Professor of General Practice in UCC, and he just is a fantastically specialised in dementia as a GP. And I know patients feel dementia is some sort of an inevitable part of ageing. We know people are living much longer. We see families worried about dementia, and it feels like, I think, to GPs and patients alike, that there's nothing you can do about it, and it's terrible when it happens. So a 14-point plan, or at least some kind of constructive areas that you can manage or go after with your patient cohort, gives us a sense of control or ownership back, and a sense that it's not an inevitable decline, but something that can be slowed and changed. So I think that's a really timely because all of us, no matter what part of the country, and you have elderly people coming in, and if you're not doing cryo to their AKs on their face because of their sun exposure, you have their daughter going, "Daddy or Mommy, you're getting forgetful," and found the car keys here, there, and everywhere. So having an approach in the consultation is brilliant. And I know part of his talk could be about the shingles vaccine. I don't know about you, John, but I'd be really interested to hear the link between shingles vaccination and dementia prevention, because patients ask me all the time about shingles vaccination, and it is kind of expensive. So it'd be great to have some more concrete information to give patients as to the benefits, not beyond just preventing painful shingles.
Yeah, and again, I'm really looking forward to this talk, Suzanne, because you have, two cohorts there being dealt with in one. As you said, maybe the older fashioned way of thinking about dementia is in terms of an inevitability that some people are very unlucky in their older years that they develop dementia, whereas others are luckier. And now, of course, there's much more understanding about things that we can do from decades prior to that to reduce our risk. And that's again something that patients are coming in with more and more in younger cohorts. They're far more mindful of aging well, if you like. And as you said, the shingles shot covers that aspect in terms of prevention.
It does. And, like knowing what is the interlink between exercise, between your diet, your cholesterol, your smoking, alcohol, sleep, all of the different things that, as I sometimes say to patients, it's doing the boring bits right, actually, is most helpful. And it's about revising those and feeling like there's something real you can say to patients as opposed to que sera, sera. So, and Tony, I've heard him speak before. He's fantastic on this topic. So I think it's hugely beneficial to all of us in general practice.
And you're helping me overcome my guilt here in terms of my sedentary ways, and maybe giving me a bit of inspiration to make some changes. You're going through your checklist there, and I was ticking my bingo card.
How am I doing on these things?
Yeah, I could probably do with some wholesale changes, but never mind on that. And on that note, let's turn to something that I probably, if I did enough of it, I might get, and that's runner's knee.
Yes, so we have a great course called Musculoskeletal Medicine and Imaging, and our course director is Dr. Billy Toomey, and it's a great course. We just had the first year of it this year, and it's very popular. And I asked Billy, would he do a vignette, so something short for a webinar series? And he said to me, what would you like me to do? And on a slightly personal note, I said, well, could you do something about runner's knee, like something like fat pad impingement and Hoffa's pad? And he said, that is remarkably specific, Suzanne. I said, well, it could be because I ran a 10-mile race in Mallow and now I can't move my knee. And I want to hear that I'm going to be okay. So I managed to rehab thanks to my fantastic physiotherapist, and avoiding MRI and injection, I managed to get my knee in somewhat reasonable shape. And I was taking part in a fabulous event at the weekend in Cork, which was the Cork Marathon Series. I did not run a marathon or even a half marathon, but I ran 10K with my pals.
Well done.
And it was a really, really uplifting event for anyone who was there for the weekend. And as I was saying to you earlier, John, bodies big and small, old and young, were running. And there were thousands. I mean, I think 4,500 people alone did the 10K. And all I could think of was there's going to be a lot of people into their GP in Munster with sore knees and this week. So yes, you were trying to encourage our patients to be active and not sedentary, but sometimes we get a little bit sore and something starts hurting with exercise. And a runner's knee is very, very common. And some patients are very worried and they immediately think they need orthopedic surgery or advanced imaging. And I think Billy's going to do an approach to the runner's knee to calm us all down and give us a more structured and effective approach to how to manage patients with sore knees after running. And I will be very much tuned into that one.
Well, fair play for using the webinar as a vehicle
I know.
to treat your own conditions.
I know. To be learning about, can you help me, please, Billy?
This is what goes on behind the scenes. Yeah. But listening to you there, Suzanne, it just reminds me of, the importance of our role in managing people from cradle to grave.
Yes.
And one of the lovely developments, I think, in recent years is that more and more people in their 70s and beyond are coming in with things like musculoskeletal injuries, and they're saying to you at 78 or at 80 years old, I'm due to play tennis in a couple of weeks' time in a tournament. Sort this problem out.
Yes.
So things have changed so much.
Well, I think that there's been lots of doctors really, really encouraging movement as a medicine for a long time. And I probably struggled to get a foothold because doctors had prescription pads and not gym memberships. But certainly I found in my practice that Xwell, which is a HSE supported, if not completely free, but it's HSE supported program around the country, has made an enormous difference to our patients. I mean, my father is going, I'm sorry to out my father, but he absolutely adores his Xwell classes in Dublin and he goes 3 times a week. And many of my patients feel their balance is better, they're stronger. And, things about falls prevention and, as Tony Foley with dementia prevention, it's so important. And I often say to patients, getting yourself up and off a toilet, say using your hands, having the strength to get yourself off the floor, that it's hugely good for our patients. It obviously prevents a lot of admissions to hospital. It's hugely cost saving for the state to have our older patients much more active, engaged in their communities, stronger, better balance, and then ultimately with less. I mean, it's granted like hurt your knee playing tennis with rotation, but at least you're playing tennis. I mean, that's fantastic.
Absolutely.
Being active is so important. And I think Xwell is a fantastic program to support that. And we can all refer our patients to Xwell as well.
Yeah, and I'll put a link to the Xwell site as well. It's got a good website. But, I suppose, what the webinar does, when we have an opportunity to discuss it in this forum, Suzanne, is it reminds me at least of the value of all these different pieces of education in plugging into the lived experience of our patients. And
Yes.
there's 4 really good topics again now coming up this Wednesday, and you can certainly, I'm sure many of us can imagine how we'll probably hit 3, if not all 4 of those topics in the next week.
Exactly. And that's the magic of general practice is it's so diverse. And I sometimes say to patients, it's like being constantly in an exam, an OSCE exam. You don't know what the examiner is going to ask you next because the patient is now your examiner for the rest of your life. And, so we have to hop from topic to topic and be, like you said, you don't want your patients catching you out knowing no more about sunscreen than you do. So like it's a constant drive to stay ahead of Google Doctor or Instagram Doctor. So but it's so interesting, isn't it? It's so interesting to be able to change. And certainly medical students I've had, that's always how they reflect. I can't believe all the different things you get asked, having worked in specialist hospital clinics. So I think that's what we love, that hopefully will prevent burnout. And then the college is here to support you so you can manage those consultations and feel that you're confident in talking to patients about these diverse topics. And, we're in the directorate, Dermot and I and Brian Osborne and, the clinical leads, we're always thinking about what do our colleagues want to hear about? Like what will we have in the web? So we're already planning our webinars for the autumn. We're trying to keep the topics interesting, relevant, GP focused, evidence-based. And it's a great job to have, actually. It's brilliant to be a part of it. And as you know, recording the podcast, there's so many topics out there. It's literally an infinite loop, which is great.
Absolutely. And that kind of brings us right back around then, Suzanne, to where we started in terms of that poll that's available on the college website under the PCSE portfolio page. And as we say during every episode, if you have ideas for the podcast, please do reach out to us at podcast@icgp.ie. And just like the Wednesday webinars, we're planning our autumn recordings now. And if people do have learning needs that they think would benefit from the podcast format, please do drop us a line, get in touch. We listen, we read everything that we get.
We do, and we've had emails from Waterford, we've had emails from Galway, we've had emails from GP trainees, we've had so many suggestions. We do have definite plans for endometriosis, obesity, and other really hot topics, definitely more in dermatology and acne, because we're constantly being asked about that. So we are listening and we are planning. So please keep in touch, because it is for you, the listeners, that we are making these. So we want them to be as relevant as we can make them.
Okay, great. Well, unless there's anything else from your side, Suzanne.
No, I think we're good.
And I want to let you get back to the end of the beautiful Bank Holiday Monday. But thank you so much for your time, and enjoy the summer break, and see you on the other side.
Thank you, John. Take care.
Thanks, Suzanne.
Bye now. Bye-bye.